Welcome to the Marvel Cinematic University podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Canton III, and we are here for a special edition of the show. It's not often we get a trailer that captivates the Marvel Universe and its fans, and that is Daredevil Born Again, which, I mean, quite honestly, shout out to the Save Daredevil folks online all the way back in 2018 after the show got canceled on Netflix. We finally got our guy back, and we got Murdoch and Fisk, so excited to talk about that. But before we get to that, patreon.com/universitypod, we can get our bonus content, such as we have the subscriber mailbag coming later this month, John Wick 3 coming later this month, Discord, $3 to get in there, have fun conversations. I may drop little tidbits here on things going on in the MCU, things along those lines. And for folks who have been watching or listening to our mini-series, Road to Doomsday, we've had 2 parts come out so far. We've got a bunch planned. So anybody who's been tapped in on what we've been doing, Road to Doomsday, please like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel, all of those things. And with that being said, no Jake Christie today. Jake is a little preoccupied, but he will be handling the 1s and 2s and all of those things. Appreciate you, Jake. And in the meantime, I did need to get some real Marvel heads for this. So first, returning, I think the last time Howard was on was August, right after the Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom announcement.
The Doom reveal.
Yes, the Doom reveal. Howard Bryant is back. Howard, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. Happy New Year, and I don't care what anybody says. If we haven't spoken this year, I'm saying Happy New Year. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
There's no statute of limitations on when you can say that to somebody.
I also don't mind that either. It's not that big of a deal. I do agree. I tend to agree. I, at some point, chivalry has to stay alive.
That's right. Calm down, people.
Yes, 100%. And also, we have our pal, nerdalist Hunter Radesi is in the house. Hunter, how you doing, man?
You know, I'm doing all right. Fighting through a couple illnesses, so I apologize if my voice. I feel like I'm saying this like every time I'm on the show is that I'm fighting through illness, but that's just like how this year has been going, I guess. But yeah, so if I'm a little raspy, that's why. Some of you might like it, some of you might not. I don't know. Roll with it.
It's a thing that the whole
it may become your new look. Just maybe, how you sound from now on.
I'm gonna have to replicate this for the rest of time.
Just add it to the game.
And with all of that being said, yes, Daredevil Born Again. So it's funny. So when Howard has always been on this show, when we've talked about Daredevil, people who have listened to this show for the past few years know that Howard is the Daredevil guy. This is his guy. He has the comic collection. He got the whole 9 yards. And your relationship to the comics and your relationship to the show are vastly different.
And don't forget the movie. I'm sorry. Movie. Let's forget the movie.
Never forget talking about... Let's not forget the movie, because I think we need the movie to appreciate some of the things that we have now.
Right. That movie had one scene in it where I was like, okay. And that was the first shot of the Kingpin.
Yeah.
It was the first shot, and they showed him, and I was like, because that was taken directly from, I think it was one of the Millers. And so Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin, I was like, okay, we're on to something. And then we weren't on to something.
No.
And we stopped being on to something.
They were on to something. I just don't know what it was.
That's right.
But yes, in continuing, so your relationship to the show is different. I think the contention that you have always had, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, is that you feel like Matt Murdock, he should not be this brutal, destroying everybody, looking for the fight all the time thing that the show for the first 3 seasons has exhibited with its fight scenes and which positively received by its audience. But you're a little bit different in that aspect. So how do you feel now as we see this trailer for the returning Daredevil Fist, the whole 9 yards? What are your thoughts?
Well, I remain concerned. Mm-hmm. However, it was extremely exciting seeing that trailer. And my Daredevil CV goes back a long, long way. It goes back almost 50 years. To the point where I was collecting when I was in like the 6th or 7th grade, and I made one of the worst financial decisions you could possibly make. Whereas I traded my X-Men, I was in 6th grade, I traded my X-Men Hellfire Club 131 to 140, which is Dark Phoenix, which is the revival of the X-Men. I traded that for Miller Daredevil. I gave away, I think, 9 X-Men 131 to 140, which is 10 of those. And I traded them for 162, which was 3 episodes after Miller, which was 158. And I traded that up to I believe it was 191. So I got a lot of Miller, but I traded X-Men. So financially bad deal, but I was in for life with Daredevil. And then I began the Daredevil backfill project, which I believe in 2016 was completed. So I have all of the original Volume 1 Daredevil from number 1 to number 380 and 10 annuals. So I got it all. Right?
You got it all?
Got it all.
You've seen it all? But yeah, continue with the trailer.
So the trailer, Born Again it's the greatest. I mean, I will put Miller's Born Again 227 to 233 up against anything that's ever been made in the comics. It's brilliant. It's truly, truly brilliant. And they tried to come in with a little bit of it at the end of the Netflix series, and to take this on, you've got a phenomenal story. But what they did, what I saw in the trailer, was they've moved forward to when Wilson Fisk, when Kingpin becomes the mayor.
Yes.
So I'm interested in seeing what they do, if Born Again is simply a title, or if they are actually going to tell the Born Again story. I would imagine it's got to be both.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a combination of both. I think the biggest thing that kind of sticks out to me, and I'll throw it to Hunter in a second, is the idea of not only moving forward, but we're putting Fisk and Murdoch in a different position than we've ever seen them in the series, in that it seems like for the time being, they're choosing to stay out of each other's way, knowing that eventually we are going to build back up to their eventual confrontation.
No, but the piece has to be broken, right? I mean, they sort of say that in the trailer, which also tells you that they are letting you know that they are going to do something close to Born Again, because Kingpin knows who he is.
Yes, yeah, with that identity part, that's a fascinating thing. And it seems like Matt's in a different place. We see Karen, we see Foggy. That was a nice shot to see the three of them together. What were your initial thoughts on the trailer?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we do see Karen and Foggy, but it's that same shot that we keep seeing of Karen and Foggy, and he makes a whole big thing about why did you stop being a vigilante? And he's like, a line was crossed. As you see that helmet falling, and it's the same broken horn that you see in the set photos where they're filming in front of the bar. And I'm still in the camp of people who's like, either Foggy or Karen or both are like not making it out of a flashback sequence.
I would tend to agree. Yeah.
But anyway, I really liked the trailer. I think I agree that thematically they're going to take and play with a lot of those elements from Born Again, which in my opinion, since that story was written, kind of like Howard was just saying, it's so quintessential to that character that like the themes presented and played with in that comic book story have just become kind of a part of like most Daredevil media.
It's essentially Dark Knight. It's the Dark Knight of Daredevil. Like, you can't escape it.
Exactly, you can't escape it. So I'm sure that will be in there. I think title-wise, and I see it in the trailer too, season 3 did do a lot of the more like obvious adaptation. Yeah, like with the his mom and him losing everything and yada yada, the whole like impersonating Daredevil with Bullseye, which was like a fun switch from Nuke, because they'd already used him in the Jessica Jones show. Like, that was interesting. They did a lot of that. So thematically, I think that's there, but I think it's cool to see how much they're pulling from some of the newer Daredevil runs. Obviously there's a lot of like Charles Soule stuff in there. There's some Chip Zdarsky stuff in there. I don't know if I've never known if I'm saying his last name correctly, so I apologize if I'm not. I think it's like a pen name anyway, but that's really cool. It struck me too with this trailer just how much they were clearly trying to show people like this season's going to be really cool and brooding and like all the things that you love about Daredevil, but like look how close to the Netflix show we've kept it. Like, so much of the trailer for me was that, and I don't even say that in a bad way, but they're like, look how much like crazy brutal blood thumping action there is. Look how many arms we're gonna break in one trailer, and how
and
many
that
birds
and
are
that
there.
breaking into
exactly,
the
and
I
blood
that
know.
was
bothered
just
me.
like, wow.
Yeah, so it's like they have that where they're like,
Yeah.
this is the stuff you liked from the Netflix. It's almost like they're being like, don't you worry, we're gonna have like a 15-minute wonder
Fight
action
scene.
shot at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also have that focus on, Fisk and Murdoch, and then that poster that releases simultaneously with the trailer, right? Like, is Fisk and Murdoch that light and dark? It's like constantly them battling, and obviously it's going to build up to some sort of confrontation with them. But then it also makes me think, like, okay, but why are they sitting and speaking civilly in the diner? Is this the public facing Fisk is running for mayor now, so we're not doing crazy stuff in the darkness thing? Or are we going with this, like, X2, there's a greater villain, and now like Magneto and Professor X have to sit down and be like, we still got beef, but for right now we got to set that aside because there's this scarier person on the loose, like maybe IE Muse, I don't know. So it's like I see a lot of, it's cool they're pulling in new elements that were not present at all in the Netflix show, but marketing wise, they are still focused very much on like, look, it's a revival of the Netflix show. We still have these characters that you love. Karen and Foggy are back. Frank Castle is back.
Yeah.
But also here's some new stuff. I thought it was a good mix, but it struck me how heavily focused it appeared to be on like, look at the nostalgia of this.
But that's appropriate, don't you think? Because the outrage and the fan base really did appreciate the Netflix show.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they wanted to give you a little fan service to say, look, we didn't reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah.
I mean, we may have, but we don't want you to think that we have.
Yeah.
And so, to me, I think the issue that the exciting piece of it is really depending on how you feel about Vincent D'Onofrio as a character, like, because he's doing his his Law and Order SVU psychological stuff at the table. It's what he does, and he's constantly tortured and constantly brooding and the whole thing, which is very different from the comic Kingpin, but it's very D'Onofrio. So he gets to be himself in that character. I think what I'm going to be interested in seeing is, the reason why I had a problem with all of the violence isn't because I shy away from violence. It's just because it's simply that it was cartoonish for a man with no superpowers to absorb that much punishment. It was too much. Mm-hmm. Like, you cannot function in your everyday life if you're doing that. And so what I was wondering was if they were just going to go like Thor Ragnarok Hulk and just say, okay, you're not even going to be Matt Murdock anymore. You're just going to be Daredevil, because you cannot walk around in your daily life taking that much punishment and still have an alter ego. Well, you can't do both.
And I sort of agree with that, but I'm almost more interested in, and I know this is a thing people have talked about a lot, but like the Fisk side of things, right? Is they're saying that like this is canon to the Netflix show, and then also like their other appearances in She-Hulk, Hawkeye, Echo, whatever. And Vincent D'Onofrio has gone on record to say that the portrayal of Fisk in this season is way more on par with what we saw in Echo, which makes a lot of sense because that was more on par with what we saw on Netflix. But like I really enjoyed the Hawkeye show. I've not been secretive about that, but like the Hawkeye of it all Hawkeye is such cool. Like a elephant in the room for me, where I'm like, okay, if that's canon, like this man was taking hits from like rockets and cars and stuff.
Yeah, man.
And
he got hit by a car.
Yeah, and like Daredevil has, to a degree, like a certain amount of superpowers. Like, not obviously superpowers don't include taking the punishment, but you could maybe even make like a really loose argument around like, well, his superpowers like suspension of disbelief. But I'm curious to see, and my guess is they're just not going to talk about it. Like, they're just going to be like, yeah, he survived some sort of encounter with Hawkeye, or that was maybe part of his criminal whatever. But like,
well, didn't they power him up in recent years anyway, to the point where it was like, okay, is he even a mutant? I mean, I think that they powered Fisk up to the point where
that Hawkeye series was pretty much
like he's like the Blob now.
Yeah. He was like the Juggernaut to
a and my introduction, actually, I read comics when I was young, but being a little bit younger, like by the time I started reading comics, there was also some adaptations out there. And my introduction to both Daredevil and Fisk was actually Spider-Man the Animated Series, because I would watch that all the time as a kid because I was a big Spider-Man head. And I had the like 2-episode Daredevil Spider-Man crossover on VHS, and I would watch that on repeat all the time. So my introduction to Daredevil and Kingpin was that like VHS. And Kingpin has a line in that, which Howard, you could probably let me know if I'm not 100% sure at what point in the comics they like talked about this. I think it was maybe mentioned like Born Again, where he's like, yeah, I look fat, but I'm like more muscle than fat. And the whole explanation in that show was like, he's just like 99% muscle. And so there, it's like kind of being like a superhero where he is
That's
sort of
right.
like the Blob. And I'm almost wondering if they're just gonna like throw in a weird line like that at some point in this show. I don't know.
Yeah, you make the same mistake everyone makes. You think
Yeah.
I'm merely fat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that battle has been taking place because, you know, Kingpin is a Spider-Man villain since the 1960s.
Yep.
And a classic is Spider-Man 197, when he just beats the living shit out of Spider-Man and then disappears and ends up in Daredevil.
That's a classic, yeah.
It is one of the great comics of all time.
Love that one, yeah.
And so, yeah, and I think that, but the powering up is something, like there are a couple of things that you just have to be comfortable with. One is the movies aren't the comic books. The shows aren't the comic books.
Right.
And like you've powered up Wanda Maximoff to the point where she is unrecognizable to the comic book, at least the early years. And now she's super, super, super powerful. And I think you're going to see, obviously, you're going to see the same with Kingpin. And I think that you're clearly seeing something similar with Daredevil in that where they've, I think the reason why I always also had such difficulty with it is because you have the violent Daredevil. Daredevil was the counter to the two guys who were out there just crushing guys, Wolverine and Punisher. So you don't need Daredevil to be that guy. Daredevil was the one that they were sick of because he was actually trying to tone down their violence. And now in these incarnations, he's more violent than they are.
Yeah, he's embracing it.
Exactly. He's embraced it. So it's an interesting character development for him. And so it's like, okay, well, it's not really quite the same guy, but you got to have an open mind because we've been waiting for this for a really long time and it looks great. And, the dripping blood didn't do a great deal for me because once again, I'm like, he's just a man. He's not
gonna
that
be a
strong.
sticking point for you. I can't wait when we do these episodes.
Oh my goodness! But it reminds me.
I
mean, now, as I said before, though, let's also be clear: if Rosario Dawson was going to take care of me, I would take a whole bunch of punishment too.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Let's just put that out there.
110%.
If there's some empty warehouse where Rosario Dawson is going to nurse me back to health, I'll go out and fight in the alleys too.
No, I feel you. I feel you on that one. I think it's so funny, and in listening to you guys kind of put some of the elements together of some of the stuff that we might be getting. I think the thing that really fascinates me in a bigger picture MCU wise is something that Howard, you've always talked about on our show about. Let's see the street level side of the MCU.
Yes.
Let's see it a little bit more. And the Devil's Reign element that this show is going to take a lot from with Mayor Fisk, and I'm guessing there's going to be a little bit of the vigilante task force.
I couldn't tell, and tell me if I had this wrong, but in that trailer, I'll have to watch it again. Did I see the White Tiger in there too?
You sure did.
I was like, did I just see the White Tiger in there?
You absolutely did.
I was like, Hector, is that you?
It's Hector.
And so, yeah, I was like, we got a Hector Ayala sighting, and so there was that. In addition to Bullseye, and that was fun. That was straight Hell's Kitchen, and having lived at 49th and 10th, I really embraced that. I love that. So I'm looking forward to that piece too.
Yeah, I think with a lot of different, I think the thing that you could use with this street level element, not only with this vigilante task force story that I think they're going to tell with Frank Castle and what's going to happen with him potentially running into Fisk again, that should be a thing. There's a lot of threads that you could pull at, which eventually will rope in folks like Spider-Man into that story because it just has to, based off of what Fisk is going to be trying to implement, especially at least for the time being.
At some point you have to. But then again, I think there's one other piece of this too, which I'm really I do wish if Tony Stark can step in and give Spider-Man a nice clean nanotech costume, why does Daredevil's costume still look like he's wearing jeans? Why doesn't he have a nice? Why is he wearing knee pads? Why doesn't he have a nice smooth
I'm not
costume.
wearing hockey pads.
Well, because
Right?
to be quite honest, he got the sauce, he got the drip from the dude out in California. The dude out
That's
in
true.
California from She-Hulk was
Yeah.
making all of his outfits. He got all of the different helmets. You see all of the different colors and stuff like that. So it seems like Matt's been kind of
He's going to power up a little. He's going to level up. He
yeah,
should level up.
yeah, he's definitely gonna level up a little bit, and that's where when I mentioned the street level stuff, I think there's such an opportunity for the MCU to branch out, especially using the TV shows to like this one specifically. And I love that this is going to be 2 seasons, 9 episodes apiece. It gives you time to tell a more complete story of what is going on in Hell's Kitchen after the fact of what occurred in the first 3 seasons, and putting Fisk in this new light and putting Matt in this new light, whatever drives him to, I guess, for the time being, put down the suit for a little bit, what's going to bring him back, which is somebody like the Hunter, which I'll lead to you. What did you think of us seeing the villain Muse and seeing potentially what type of impact he's going to have on the show?
Yeah, I think that's a really good lead into one of the next points I kind of wanted to make in my head, which was like, obviously we are going to talk about all these things they did show in the trailer, but I feel like there's so much we have an idea of that's going to happen in this season that they didn't really touch on in the trailer at all, or only gave us like very brief glimpses at. And that's all the stuff that I think actually interests me more than, because I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Daredevil Fisk stuff. I love all of that. It's a really wonderful dynamic, but like, I kind of know what that dynamic is like already, and I'm interested to see where it goes, but I also kind of have an idea of like where it's going to go, just based on a lot of precedents. And for me, I'm like, Muse is a villain we haven't seen a lot of, with a lot of crazy potential, who I think is going to be a much more sick and twisted villain than Matt Murdock is, really grotesque at the very least villain than Matt Murdock has really had to go
Reminds
up
me
against.
of Victor Zsasz for a DC
Yeah.
reference. Yeah.
Yes, that's perfect. It is. It's gonna be like, if we had a Batman TV show and we had a couple seasons of like the Riddler and like the Penguin and these guys, then all of a sudden there's a whole season where Zaz is like making human art on the streets. You're like, whoa, this is like a whole different type of villainy that we have to deal with. So I'm really excited about that because I'm curious to see what that does for both Fisk and Murdoch, and I'm curious to see what that dynamic is going to be like between Daredevil and Muse. And then the same vein, like, we Punisher is back, and like, how does Punisher factor into this season? He looks a little worse for wear. I mean, he had 2 full seasons of his own show after his last Daredevil appearance that are technically canon now, I guess. And like, does that play into anything? We mentioned White Tiger, which is
you
really
thought
cool.
Daredevil was brutal. That Punisher show, show was brutal.
That was brutal.
Well, what's funny about all that too is that I am not necessarily in the mood for another. I'm bored by the psycho killer villain. I mean, I've just seen enough of them. Like, they're once again. I think when you talk about legacy and you think about telling new stories and what type of stories you want to tell, we have never escaped from Frank Miller, right? You've never escaped from Miller and Heath Ledger and this type, or that type of supervillain, or just villain at all. Gotham reigns over Marvel. Gotham reigns over everything because of that type of villain. I never liked ninjas either. That the one piece of Miller's game I never liked was the Daredevil ninja whole thing, because I just don't. I would love
the
to see
hand and all of that other stuff.
the hand that wasn't
not
your
vibe.
That wasn't my vibe. But it's a lot of hand. It lends itself to a lot of hand to hand, interesting sort of choreography fighting. So I get that sort of Crouching Tiger thing where they're doing it's fighting and art at the same time, and so I'm looking forward to seeing just what type of villains we're going to see. Because if there's one thing about Daredevil that's always been a bit of a hole, Daredevil, when Kingpin crossed over from Spider-Man into Daredevil never really had a signature super villain, like a real guy that you were saying, here's your guy. It was when Miller came along, it was Bullseye. And then Daredevil, paralyzed Bullseye, and that was that. and it hasn't really. It's been Kingpin, and I'm wondering who that next guy is going to be.
Well, to jump off of that, I was what I was leading to, what I was just saying too, is like, as interested as I am in all this stuff, like, we know that Bullseye is in this season, and I'm
Yeah.
almost a little disappointed. As much as cool as I think Muse will be, I'm almost a little disappointed that Bullseye is not, as far as we know, not a bigger player this season.
I think they're holding their cards with that.
Well, we
I
got a
think they
problem
can
though.
play.
Don't forget
He will be a
do
player.
not forget the thing that AC that we always talk about. Too many villains ruins the movie. You
That's
can't,
right.
like if you do Spider-Man 3 and you've got,
Oh my god.
and you've
Yeah.
got Sandman and you've got this and you've
Well,
got,
and that's what I feel
too
like.
many.
I feel like the show's gonna be like Fisk and Muse, and then Bullseye's gonna be that, like, oh, in some flashback he killed Karen and Foggy. Like, it's gonna be an insinuation of, yeah, we set him up to be like the Bullseye from the comics at the end of season 3, and then this is a revival several years later, and they're gonna kind of skip over like whatever season 4 would have been, and they're gonna be like, yeah, all that stuff we set up, it happened with Bullseye over the last couple years, and then you only get to see like this one flashback, and it kind of culminates in the reason that Daredevil retires. And I'm like, if the season's great, the season's great, and if it works, it works. But
Yeah.
I am worried that this. I really like Bullseye. I always have, and I actually really liked the departure that season 3 took with him, where he was less of just, oh, he's like Joker who with great aim.
That was a very.
Yeah.
I'll say this much. I thoroughly enjoyed the backstory that they put together for that.
Yeah, like he's got a real name. There's a complexity to him. You kind of like see where he's
He
going.
has a real name?
In the show, they named him Benjamin Poindexter.
He's Poindexter, but that's an alias too.
Yeah, the show never really clarifies, but they present it as like a real name, I guess. So it's like, it's not just Lester like it is in the comics, and we don't really fully know. I thought it was interesting that they put work into like developing him a little bit more, and I was so excited to see that play off and how they would like take that and combine it with like more classic Bullseye. And I know Charlie Cox has made comments in the past that from what he saw of the original season 4 ideas, like they were really going to dive into like the Daredevil Bullseye rivalry. And not that I needed that to be like the sole focus of a season. I was just very interested by it. And I think if anything disappoints me a little bit that I've been worried about leading into this, that the trailer didn't do much to like rectify in my mind, is that we're gonna get like one sequence at the very beginning of like costumed Bullseye doing this thing, and then he's just kind of like a Hannibal Lecter character in jail in the same way.
I hope that's not the case.
And I hope that's not the case either, because who is Bullseye as a character? Bullseye is not necessarily a homicidal maniac, right? He was in 169 when he had a brain tumor, classic 169 as well. But what's interesting about what they do with that character is you can, his personality. One of the great things about Bullseye is that he's everything Daredevil. I mean, they're the same character, just one. They fight the same way in a lot of ways. They, everything in my hands is a deadly weapon. He's essentially the Kingpin's assassin. But the fundamental difference between those two is that Bullseye, at the end of the day, lacks conviction, which sounds familiar, right? Coulson, you lack conviction. It's in your nature to lose. And Bullseye can't handle the fact that he always loses because he can't find that killing stroke, right? Of all, the greatest assassin can't quite do that. So I am interested in seeing what they do with those two. And then obviously, I don't know. I didn't see it from the trailer. Is there an Elektra element in any of this for 2 seasons?
I feel like the second season, I think there's a better chance of that. I feel like this first season, to Hunter's point earlier, is more of a let's reestablish the character. Finally, we've seen Matt in a lot of cameos over the past few years, and now we're giving you guys what you wanted. The audience gets their Daredevil back, and then we can now build that story out while also the machine itself in Marvel.
But we're not getting our Ben Urich back, though.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious that like you brought up White Tiger before too, right? And I think that they really do want to delve into like, okay, let's reestablish these characters. Let's reestablish what like street level Marvel looks like. We're gonna really use this as like our flagship character for that, which I guess makes sense. But then also throw in elements from the wider MCU that they feel more open to play with now. So it's like you have White Tiger, and again, I don't know how they're gonna go about it in the show. They might not use this, but he has like a mythical gem that he gets his powers from, and it's like, do they throw him in there, and then they connect that gem kind of subtly to like, you know, all the other multiverse stuff going on? I don't know. Like, do they throw in the magic a little bit? Do they not do that?
You know what? So, like, I think with that, I really hope that at least for the time being, that they stay away from that here.
I do too, to be clear.
At least for the time being, I feel like, as I said before, this is a really great opportunity they have to bring back a popular show and also implement the real street level stuff. So then you can, when you bring eventually the Jessica Jones is back and the Luke Cage is back, and you know, reestablishing Frank Castle as a character again. I want to see that. I want to see those. I want to see those street level elements play a big part. Something as simple as not in this trailer, but in a Comic-Con teaser, seeing Miss Marvel's dad and involved with Matt in some type of capacity. Yeah. Like, just like little stuff like that, where it's like the comics, where characters from here and there will show up, especially in the instance of Matt doing his lawyering thing.
You know, one of the things that I actually really want to see, and I'm hoping somewhere along the line somebody gets creative enough to do it, is one of the beauties of reading comics and watching comics and seeing this is the different scales of power and the different universes that these guys live in. And when you're talking about those different crossovers and cameos that guys make, which is why the Marvel team-ups and Marvel 2-in-1s were so, you know, were so popular, because guys would just show up in universes that they didn't, you know, in worlds that they really hadn't spent any time in, is showing the fundamental difference between a street-level hero and someone who actually has superpowers. Yeah. Like I would love for them to just do a 163 where the Hulk just beats the living crap out of Daredevil, where he shows up, because what is the Hulk doing in New York City, right? I mean, some of these set pieces can be really fantastic. And they've got enough, there's enough now, because we had 22 movies and there's now 27 movies. Yeah. You know, there's enough now that you can do certain things like that if the budgets allow. And so I would really like to see some contrast where you know, a street level guy like Daredevil, you know, runs into Spider-Man or runs into, you know, somebody where you can, and you really do show that difference of what it's like to be around superpowered beings when you're just wearing a costume.
Yeah. Let me get a story of the week, to be honest. Like, I think you can tell the grander story, but also let me get a story where Matt is not only solving an actual case, but also dealing with a villain in the same episode, and then that case gets solved, and then you kind of move on. I think there is and this is what I thought She-Hulk did really well, is they kept the TV thing TV, which is something that we've often discussed about Marvel television not being able to stray from we're making a 6-hour movie. I like
WandaVision did a decent job of that too.
No, yeah, they did. They did, and I felt like She-Hulk did a great job. Loki too. It's a lot of the other stuff that kind of delved into that. We're gonna do a 6-hour movie, and then there's just like, I wouldn't even say incomplete. It's either they came up too short or they had too much that they had to tell in the last second. Also, shout out to Agatha all along. I thought that was very well done too.
Oh yeah,
very very surprising how they nailed almost everything.
I was not expecting that show to be as great as it was.
No, I mean, geez, that you want to talk about a gem. That's a gem right there. So,
I was gonna say, last thing for me though is sure. I would also, when we talk about telling different stories and what types of stories we're going to tell, and I guess having watched Penguin and having watched the last Batman and watching some of these, you know, how I said I'm tired of the psycho killer. Mm-hmm. I could go for just give me a greedy ass bank robber. You know, give me. I mean, that's what street level is all about. It's not all about pathological serial killers. We're
still waiting for Stiltman. I mean,
still waiting for exactly one of the funniest, weakest villains ever, right? Who's actually very funny. Like, and that's the thing. It's like everybody out there has different motivations. Like Electro, when I was a Spider-Man guy, Electro was a bank robber, just a greedy bank robber. Okay, Dr. Octopus wanted world domination. They're not all sociopaths, right? They're not, I mean, they're not all serial killers.
Howard, this is why I think I told you this before. The She-Hulk, I know you haven't watched it. The She-Hulk Daredevil episode, you should actually watch because it is that.
Yeah.
It is
There
pretty
is
fun, yeah.
there is a case, and Matt is dealing with some criminal dude, and She-Hulk comes along for the ride.
Yeah,
and then they
like,
have a thing.
That episode's great because it is kind of like it's like a Daredevil villain, like greedy bank robber villain of the week sort of thing, and then She-Hulk like crashes his villain of the week, and he's like, "What is going on?" And that's what makes that episode so fun.
Yes, yeah. So
yeah,
that's
I am derelict, and I'm going to absolutely. I've decided that I'm going to try to ramp up as best I can.
Yeah, because 2025 we are in for a load of stuff as we build towards Doomsday. Hunter, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I mean I think I gave most of my thoughts like over the course of this episode.
That's great.
Yeah, I just hope it's good, and I want all of the stuff that we're like throwing out there. Like I would love to see like a random superhero cameo and see how that plays out. That all feels very like season 2. I'm very curious to see what season 2 will look like after we see what season 1 is. But yeah, man, I'm pumped. I'm really pumped to have this show back. I mean, I went to a couple like Save Daredevil parties back in the day. Those people were always really nice, always very kind. I met some of the cast from the original show doing stuff like that. Like, I just think that everybody really wanted this for a long time, and I'm happy to see it coming back, and I'm happy everyone's so happy about it.
Couldn't be more well said there, and looking forward to seeing Daredevil season 3. Born Again, I should say, starting March 4th. We're not that far away, so basically another 6-7 weeks and we're right there. So I'm very excited to see what happens there. With that being said, I want to thank my guests for joining me on this episode. First, Hunter, where can we find you, my friend?
I am Radesi14. That's HRADESI and the number 14. On everything. Turns out not a lot of other people want that username. And yeah, follow me there. Like I said, I've been kind of out of the journalism game for a little bit, but I'm hoping we have some really exciting stuff coming up at my job, which is KCBC Brewing in Brooklyn, New York. So keep an eye on that Instagram page and all my stuff, and hopefully you guys will have a fun surprise there with that in the next like month or so. So
yes, I am definitely looking forward to that, and I'm keeping my lips zipped as far as that's concerned until it happens. But yes, excited for that. Howard, pleasure having you back. Looking forward to 2025 with you coming through a little bit more often.
I am. I'm around. Easy to find. Although not on. I think where can you find me now? I am just at Howard Bryant Books on Instagram.
Yes,
and even that might not exist much longer for me.
Oh, I mean,
but I'm trying to hang in there. I'm trying to find a spot. People are telling me go to Blue Sky. The sky's blue over there.
Blue Sky seems it seems like the kinder gentler place, except until it's only a matter of time, just like anything else. So we'll see what happens, but pleasure of having both of you on. Of course, you can follow me at Anthony Canton _3 on Twitter. Follow me on Blue Sky at Anthony Canton 3. Follow the show on all platforms at MC University Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. By the way, we just passed 300 subscribers, so the contest begins once again. If you DM either the show account or me your screenshot of your subscription, you got an opportunity for us to pay for your ticket for Captain America: Brave New World, which is coming out February 14th. By the way, we're not far
away from that at all.
We are. Oh boy, we are getting close. We're gonna find out if Checkers Wilson is gonna handle
exactly. His business. Maybe Checkers has graduated now. If he's hanging out with the president, he shouldn't be playing checkers anymore.
No, he needs to be in a higher spot.
Exactly. He at least needs to get that ELO rating a little higher.
Oh my goodness, can't wait for that. So yes, DM me. Or DM the show account, and you'll have an opportunity to get that win for the contest and get your ticket paid for Captain America. So with that being said, for Howard Bryant and Hunter Radesi, I'm Anthony Canton III. This has been Marvel Cinematic University, and we will talk to you next time.